Welcome everybody, I'm Chef Zyganiuk. We're back in Wasauksing First Nation for the fall issue of Muskrat Magazine. Today what I'm creating for you is a fall-inspired soup with butternut squash and roasted apples and crispy sage. What I'm creating is a butternut squash soup. It's one of my favorite soups to create for this time of year. It's a very popular soup. My personal twist on it that I'm adding today is I'm going to add some roasted golden delicious apples with a little bit of nutmeg, butter, and fresh sage. Part of the idea when you're creating menus and you're trying to do your meal planning for fall, it's getting a little bit colder outside, so you want to create meals that are a little bit heartier and are a little bit more filling. This is it's a very healthy soup. It's made with vegetable stock, just a touch of butter. It's a vegetarian soup. You can add meat to it if you like, but today it's going to be strictly vegetarian. And I'm going to walk you through the procedures of creating this soup. The way I'm going to start the soup is I'm going to start with the butternut squash. I'm going to peel it down, cut it up and dice it because it takes the longest. Cut right through the neck here. Cut the top off. Now we're just going to peel it with I'm just going to cut the skin off with the knife here. The apples that I'm using for the soup, the reason why I'm using apples is because they add a really sweet, fruity note to the soup. And so it's like a little burst flavor of soup. One of the things when you're making a soup is you want to make sure that your vegetables that you're cutting are kind of uniform, so they all cook at the same time. For example, the squash is going to cook before the apple because it's a lot firmer, so I'm going to cut the squash a little bit smaller. And they're all going to get sauteed with onion. That's where you develop your flavor base. You saute your vegetables, then it gets added to the pot with vegetable stock. Then we simmer it till it's tender, and that's pretty much essentially how you create the base for your flavor when you're creating soup. I'm just going to cut the core out of the apple, and I'm not going to bother peeling it because we're going to puree the skin all together anyway for the flavor. You get a lot of flavor in the skin too, and it's going to add a bit of color. So just simply cut the core out of the apples, and that's it. You want to make sure that they're all out because you don't want to have pieces of seed in your soup. So I'm just going to start with my squash here, and I'm just going to dice it into a rough cut, which just means that we're going to cut fairly large chunks here. I'm just going to add them to my bowl here where everything is going because it's all going to get sauteed in about 2 minutes. So you just want to make sure you have a sharp knife. Always be careful when you're cutting stuff, and you're actually always cutting away from yourself. And you're never rushing, and you don't want to crowd yourself. You want to give yourself space in the kitchen. So I'm just going to cut through these apples, cut them a little bit bigger. That's it for my apples, right into the bowl. And then I'm just going to grab my onion. Okay, so my next ingredient that we're going to add to the soup are some white onions. Actually, these are yellow cooking onions. And the reason why I'm using these ones is they have a neutral gas flavor and they're not that strong. You can use a shallot, which have pungent, strong onion flavor, or you could use a white Vidalia onion, which are really milky. They're a little bit more expensive. They're generally used for pastas and stuff like that, but these are fantastic. They're yellow cooking onions, and we're just going to cut them up really quickly now. Just peel them. These are just your standard yellow cooking onions, but they play an important role in terms of flavor in your soup, or anything for that matter. And they don't have to be cut any fancy way because they're going to break down really quick. They're going to cook faster. And I'm just doing a rough cut of these onions here because they don't have to be anything fancy for what we're doing with them. Everything is getting pureed in the end. So this is all of your soup garnish. It's taken me a whole 3 minutes to cut up, and I'm going to take you through the steps and procedures how we can achieve flavor and create a great soup from everything we have in the bowl here. So one of the important things when you're creating soups or stocks and stuff like that is you want to create a flavor-based profile like I explained earlier. One of the ways to achieve this is through aromatics, which is peppercorns, bay leaf, fresh herbs, and garlic. So I've got all of that right here, and I'm just going to... And then at this point, I'm just going to add a couple cloves of fresh garlic. This is elephant garlic here, and it's a specific strain of garlic that's a little bit bigger. And the cloves of garlic are just a little bit bigger, and it's got a little bit more how can I say, it's a little bit stronger, a little bit more pungent. So yeah, I've got just 2 cloves of garlic here, and what I'm gonna do is just lightly crush them, smear them into my board, and then I'm just gonna dice it up really fine. And that's gonna get sauteed with the carrot, squash, apple, and all that. Now, the thing about garlic when you're cooking with it, you don't want it overpowering. So, like I said, it's just 2 cloves for this, and it's gonna cook out really well. You don't want it to taste like garlic. You're not making a garlic soup. So all of this adds for flavor. And now we're gonna add our soup garnish to the pan here. I have a preheated hot pan here. Just added a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm gonna add a touch of butter here. As soon as that butter starts to sizzle a little bit more, it's gonna get frothy. I'm gonna add my vegetables like right now. So what happens is you add a little bit of butter to your oil. The oil prevents the butter from burning and turning black. And you get a nice flavor base here of olive oil and butter. So I've got all my vegetables in the pan here. I'm just gonna let it saute quickly for a little while. Add a little bit of seasoning. And just let that cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. Depending on what you're using. This is a gas barbecue, so the heat's a little bit different here. So I'll just let this saute for about 15 minutes. So now I'm just gonna add the garlic, and I'm gonna add 2 sprigs of fresh rosemary. I'm not gonna chop them or take the leaves off. What the rosemaries do is just gonna lightly infuse into the vegetables. Then I'm gonna add my cloves of chopped garlic right into the mix here. It's already been seasoned lightly, and we're just gonna let that cook now. Part of the reason why I've just added the garlic now is you want to add it after the vegetables have been cooking for a few minutes, because if you add the garlic too early, it will start to burn, and that gives you a really bitter flavor. You don't want that. So add your garlic about 5-10 minutes into the cooking process. Make sure it's minced, and it will all work together. And you shouldn't be cooking on really high. It should be medium to high heat so you have control, and your vegetables not burning to the bottom of the pot or pan. Great, so we're at that point now. The vegetables for the soup have been sauteing for about 12 to 15 minutes. They're all translucent and tender. This is what you're looking for. We don't want any color or caramelization on here. We just want them to be nice and tender and the flavor built. Now we're gonna add them to our pot of vegetable stock and water. And then we're gonna put a lid on this, and we're gonna let it simmer for about 10-15 minutes or until it's tender. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I just have some leeks sitting here, and I'm just gonna have them, and I'm just gonna lightly oil them. So I have some leeks here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wash them. I'm gonna show you why. So anytime we're working with leeks, you just wanna make sure that when you cut them apart, you take off the exterior layer and you give them a good wash, because there's always gonna be dirt in them. So you don't want that gritty stuff in your soup. So I'm just gonna lightly oil them with olive oil and a little bit of salt, and I'm gonna throw them on the grill. And we're gonna use them just for garnish. We're gonna chop them up later after they cool down. Charred leeks, the smoky grill flavor, is a great garnish for the soup. Just add a little bit of fleur de sel. And now I'm gonna take them to the grill. So they've been lightly oiled and seasoned, and I'm just gonna put them flesh side down. So now I'm gonna take my leeks, and I'm just gonna set them flesh side down right onto the grill. This is the inside. I'm gonna set that side down. And we're just gonna let these char up, let these cook for the next few minutes. I'm gonna add a couple more leaves to the pan here. So this is a garnish for the soup that you can do anytime for fish. What I'm basically doing is putting fresh herbs into really hot oil, and it's getting a quick sear like this on both sides. And it takes about 30 seconds. Once the leaves are translucent, you just add them to a paper towel to absorb all the oil, and then you're left with a nice crispy fresh herb. So I'm just taking my crispy sage leaves out of the pan that I've just done a shallow fry with, and they're nice and crisp and really flavorful. We're gonna use them just for garnish for the soup. So my soup is finished now. I'm gonna bring it over to my blender, and I'm just gonna start to ladle my ingredients into the blender. And you wanna do this carefully, and you don't wanna overcrowd the blender because the liquid's hot and you can burn yourself pretty easily. So I usually start about halfway full. And you pulse the blender until you let it run full revolution. And I'll show you what I mean. So we got our soup in there, and just to be safe here, we're gonna put a rag over it in case you hit the wrong button and it goes on high and it explodes and hot liquid goes everywhere. Want to be careful. So anyway, our soup's in here, and like I said, I'm just gonna pulse it first, right? So here's how you start it. Anytime you have hot liquids in there, and that's it. And we're gonna let that go for like 2 minutes. Okay, great. So our soup has been pureed now, and we're just gonna add the remaining batch of soup to the pot here. And at this point, we're just gonna double check the seasoning, and then we're gonna move forward to plating and adding our soup garnish. Okay, great. So our finished product is ready. Our fall-inspired roasted butternut squash and apple soup. And we're just gonna ladle it into our soup bowls now, which have been pre-warmed in the oven for a few minutes so our soup stays nice and hot. This is a 5-ounce ladle. Generally your soup portions want to be 7 to 8 ounces. Entree size, 8 or 9 ounces for sure if you're serving soup. And then I'm going to add some of my wonderful garnish that I've chopped up here and grilled. So some of my smoky charred grilled leeks. And then I'm going to add my crispy sage leaves that I fried in the olive oil in the pan. And then we're just going to finish it with some pea tendrils. With a nice chiffonade of purple kale for color. It's beautiful. And then we're going to finish it with some pea tendrils, and that's it. And that'll be it for our soup. So these give a nice little sweet crunch to the soup also. Just like that. Very easy, and we have these products here. And baby seedlings, pea tendrils, stuff like this are really fantastic for garnish. Great for visuals and flavor. I'm just going to finish it with a little bit of organic extra virgin olive oil. And the last step, just a little bit of fleur de sel. Once again, everybody, I'm Chef Zyganiuk. Thank you for tuning in today to this episode of Muskrat Magazine. I hope you enjoy the fall-inspired soup I've created for you today. This is really all it takes to create a fantastic soup just like this. There you go. Please enjoy your soup.